Northwest Liberty News, picking the lock on the shackles of tyranny.
Machines are going to fail, and the system's going to fail.
The past is past, the future's now.
Don't look at me. I think these people are completely nuts.
Sometimes trouble just follows a man.
There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus.
Can't you stop your lips from flapping for 2 little minutes?
It's because I'm white.
I'm a man. I'm sensitive. I need to feel loved. I need to be desired.
I'm rapidly becoming a big underground success in this town.
It's a question of methods. Everybody wants results, but nobody wants to do what they have to do to get them done.
And now, coming to you live from Kalispell, Montana, brought to you by Northwest Liberty News, it's Montana Gazette Radio with your host, James White. Okay, so I'm indeed your host, James White. This is Montana Gazette Radio. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the second day of August, 2021. We're delighted to be coming to you from smoky Kalispell, Montana. Even though it's pretty smoky, still a great place to live. And if you want to come and visit, it's a great place to pass on through, if you know what I mean. No, I'm just kidding. If you come here to Montana and you want to move here, just make sure that you continue to keep those same Montana values, like our guest today, who is born and raised in Montana, and we're delighted to have him on the show. And let me give him a proper introduction. I've been on the broadcast many times. I'm talking about Dr. Olszewski. He's described as truly a servant, and the way Dr. Al has lived his life demonstrates the unmatched integrity and commitment Montanans will receive from him as our next congressman from Western Montana. Al is, as I said, born and raised in Montana. He's an Air Force veteran. He was voted Flathead Valley's best orthopedist. In 2014, Dr. Al was elected to the Montana House of Representatives, and he was elected to the State Senate representing District 6 from 2016 to 2020. As a proven conservative, Dr. Al is a true fighter on all issues regarding everyday Montanans. He's a driving force to rein in the high cost of health care, open public lands, protect our agriculture, defend the Second Amendment, and fight for the unborn and most vulnerable. And we're always delighted to have him here on the broadcast. Dr. Al Olszewski, thanks so much for joining us here on Montana Gazette Radio.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing, James?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Always good to see you. Congratulations. I don't know if I've had a chance to talk to you since you sort of threw your hat in the ring there. Maybe I did. You know, you've been on the show a few times, and I've talked to you so often. I don't remember, but if I didn't, congratulations on your you're throwing your hat in the ring there for the candidate for Congress for Montana, and we appreciate your service, Dr. Al, as always. Let's start here if we can. Let's start with the macro and then move into the micro. Give us, if you can, sort of your 30,000-foot view of what you see going on here, Al. It's almost dystopic what's going on with them just flooding people into the borders. Now they're talking about, locking people out of going to the grocery store if they don't follow the government mandates. It seems like the Constitution's just been eviscerated. The Bill of Rights just destroyed. Give us your overall view, Al, of what's going on here in this country as you see it here today, August 2nd.
What we're seeing again is it is truly a battle. We are dealing with people, the hard left, who are doing everything they can to get rid of what we believe to be true and what makes America exceptional, the United States. And that is our Constitution and and the Declaration of Independence. For those of us that follow the tradition and believe that there is a creator, that we are accountable to that creator, that our inalienable rights are granted to us or given to us by God, not by man. What we're finding is that there is a large chunk of our country who just don't have that same faith. And as far as they're concerned, all rights come from the power of man, and they want to be the ones that are in power. So it is truly a pivotal point. We are fighting for our Constitution, for our moral authority found in the Declaration of Independence, and it's time to stand up. It is time right here, right now. It's time for Americans who truly believe that we are exceptional and that our exceptionality comes from the Constitution and our Declaration of Independence to stand up right now.
No, you're absolutely right, Doc. And, if people can't understand that, they are saying that words like patriot are is terrorism, and using terms like freedom. Literally, the displaying the flag now is to these people some sort of a sense of, some sort of a terrorist act, apparently. If you can talk, we talked about your service. You served this nation honorably, Doc, and to know that the service that you put in, it's almost like they trampled on you and all the fellow people that have served this country to keep. Of course, we support their ability to say what they want to say, but it's almost to the point where you feel like, why would you want to even protect these people that don't even want to support the flag or want to support veterans? Or I don't know, Doc. It's kind of one of those things where it's a tough road to hoe. Any thoughts on that? You being a veteran, it's got to insult you when they do that type of stuff.
Well, what we're seeing again is not just the opportunity to protect what those that oppose us say, but we're right now in a battle for our ability to say what we want to say and to stand up for what we believe. Look, this is right out of Karl Marx. This is right out of Mao Zedong. This is out of Stalin's playbook. Control the words, control the conversation. And if you can control that, you control ideas and you control how men and women think. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to take those things that are important to us: patriotism, our flag, the Constitution, service, above self, those kind of ideas, and they're trying to turn them into something negative, something distasteful. And they're also using a lot of different other words, and they use them frequently. What have we seen? Nazi, white supremacist, racist. These are words that they're not even using correctly because it is not about the conversation. They're using words to hurt and intimidate us because they know that they have great power that is negative. So we have to learn not to be controlled by the conflict.
Let me run this by you for a second here, Doc. You see the social media censorship where they don't want conservatives speaking to each other on social media or really to anybody. Okay, because I think that they know what you just stated, so aptly stated. If they can do the divide and conquer tactic where they pit everybody against each other, they win. They've done that with social media. They've chilled the voices of conservatives. Now they want people to be sequestered again and masked up and not communicating. I think that's what they're afraid of, Doc. I think it's one of the things they're really afraid of is that guys like you and I are going to talk to other people and we're going to explain the truth to them, and they're going to realize that we're all being duped. It's not you and I aren't against them. We're both against this establishment that's trying to take us out. Any thoughts on that?
Well, look, the one thing that I do appreciate from listening to the hard left is they're very honest about what they want to do. If you want to look at what Joe Biden wants to do, look at their manifesto that he put together with Bernie Sanders during the general election. It explained it. We heard from Joe Biden that be careful, we have a dark winter coming, and it's going to be far worse. Look, the truth is when we look at the statistical element of viruses, the mathematical statistical model shows us that more likely they become less virulent, less dangerous because of our immune system. And they will usually mutate to try to survive in a world where our immune systems take it down. So it's not usually the other way around. So again, this is all about control.
Let's jump a minute, if we can, Al, over to your website here. Great photo, by the way. It's excellent. And folks, if you're wondering, if you're here in Montana and you're wondering about Dr. Al, and if you're hearing about Dr. Al for the first time or wondering his history, his voting record, and what he stands for, it's pretty open right here on his website. 100% approval from the Montana Family Foundation, 99% approval of property owners. An NRA legislative lifetime rating, 88% American Conservative Union lifetime rating. It's no doubt, Al. There's no dispute in the fact that you're a true blue conservative and you stand for conservative values. You stand for Second Amendment rights, as you stated. You stand for the rights of the unborn. Talk about that if you can, Doc. Because I was so disappointed, Doc. I have to say, I think I had you on the show. And I lauded your efforts numerous times about how you tried to get that Baby Born Alive Act going, and they got vetoed by the governor. Is that something, Doc? I mean, I know that's not something you've probably given up on. Do you see perhaps in the future there could be another resurgence of that, or someone else can introduce that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. So it did get reintroduced in the last session. Representative Matt Regier carried it. He took my bill and he made it better. And what I mean by that is he just didn't pass it through the House and the Senate. He made it a legislative referendum, which means on the November 2022 ballot, people of Montana are going to resoundingly have an opportunity to state whether normal babies who are born alive should be granted all the rights of personhood. And that's really what the bill is. We shouldn't have to say that. That is inferred by our Constitution and Declaration of Independence, right? The pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. So but what we're seeing is that the hard left is redefining things. They're forcing us to have to pass laws to protect what's already in place that is just literally common sense.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Doc, we're gonna bump over here to move more towards your campaign and a couple of issues that are topical here pertaining to the medical field, which I know you're certainly very knowledgeable about. But let's start off first here, if we can. I just want to commend you, Al, for the amount of class that you showed when you responded to the Trump endorsement of Zinke. We tried to reach out to Zinke here, not Zinke, but we tried to reach out to, we had some connections to Don Jr. We tried to let him know ahead of time when we first heard about the possibility of him endorsing him a couple weeks out. We tried to get some information out to their camp to let them know that really wasn't the conservative that we wanted, that Montana really stands behind. Didn't get through, who knows what. At any rate, you handled it very well, Al. You handled it with great class. Talk, if you can, about that. And we'll just touch on that briefly, then we'll move on to a couple other things. Just address that if you can.
You bet. Well, once again, this endorsement came 6 days after I jumped into the race and I made it a two-person race. Let's be clear. Trump's endorsement is not one of a referendum that's in full opposition of my Montana First, America First principles and belief and policy. This was a personal favor to his son's hunting buddy. And also not only to Ryan, but also to his wife, who was instrumental in Trump's campaign for Latinos for Trump. I mean, Lola, she did an awesome job of organizing the Hispanic vote and gaining great fundraising capabilities for Trump in 16 and 20. And she should be commended for this. But clearly, what this is a personal favor. It's a calling in of a chip. You helped me a lot, and I'm going to help you. It has nothing to do about policy. It has nothing to do about who I am and what I run for.
I concur. And I think the voters are going to, just because Trump endorses Zinke, by no means, that's by no means a lock and by any stretch of the imagination. I think that people are tired of establishment now. They're just tired of it. We did an article here. I should have brought it up. Back last month, well, actually, it's in June now, but Ryan Zinke had a fundraiser there in Helena. And, the list of rhinos that were lined up in his thing, I reported on it. Actually, I wrote an article on it. I couldn't believe they just throwing us softballs. For crying out loud. It's pretty clear that this is the establishment versus the non-establishment. There's many other things. It's not just cut and dry that, but there's no doubt that I think your opponent is establishment. I think he'll continue to vote with establishment along establishment lines, and I just don't see him really representing the folks as much as you would. And I don't really necessarily want you to comment on that, Al. I just wanted to make that statement. Okay, so let's here's something, Al, that I knew you're not going to believe. I know we just touched on this briefly before we actually started the show. It's getting to the point, Al, where I just don't even know what to say. American Medical Association wants sex removed from public birth certificates. This is published today by the Gateway Pundit. Al, being a doctor, what's your first initial visceral reaction to something that you see this craziness?
Well, again, the American Medical Association is gutless, and they're going to follow the pressure of the hard left. look, if we're talking about the science, if we're talking about statistics, the birth certificate has many roles, but one of them is to know uh, how many men and women are born in this country. Look, if you're going to take off your sex, how you were born, uh, then what's next? Should we take off our names? I mean, why even have a birth certificate? And quite honestly, that's what they would like to see. The hard left would like to see no birth certificates, because without them, how would you then prove that you were born here and you're a citizen of the United States? So again, this is, once you remove and you compromise on one thing, you've compromised on everything. So again, the American Medical Association, gutless.
This isn't a religious program, Al, but we talk about these things, from time to time. This is really, really apparently to me a spiritual battle that we're in. I mean, it really, really is. The enemy, our Creator doesn't sow confusion. The enemy sows confusion, and that's what they're trying to do with this whole, gender, misgendering and the library story time. And I see this as being not only a sort of a political battle and a sort of a cultural battle, but I see it as being sort of a spiritual battle as well. Al, do you see it that way also?
Again, I do. My worldview is that we were created by God. We're here for a purpose, and and the end game is not only to get myself and my wife to heaven, but my children and my children's children. And with that means that the golden rule is very important. So for people who don't have that faith, that don't have that worldview, that there is a creator, I think Rousseau was the grandfather of human secularism, said, boy, I don't believe in God, but I certainly hope that my wife does, because that means that she'll cheat on me less often. And I hope my banker does, because that means he won't embezzle from me. So if you don't have that faith, look for a public servant that does, so that we'll be more honest and we will be very clear about where we stand, so we don't rob you blind and cheat you.
That'd be a rarity amongst those folks, Al, if you didn't do that. Let's shift gears here a little bit. Again, this is medical type stuff, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about them. This is from the College Fix, University medical ethicist. Unvaccinated people should be barred from public places. I mean, Al, it seems to me that I don't get it, how they want to so hard push for the vaccinations and push for the masking and for the mandatory, but yet they let, I don't know how many thousands of people that apparently are testing positive for COVID into the border. It seems almost like it's the height of hypocrisy here, Doc. You want us to, they want us to do all the suffering and all of the losing our businesses and losing our freedoms, but they're letting people that are coming in undocumented over the border just, with COVID, just put them right into the society and letting them go free. It's not about our health, is it, Doc? It doesn't seem to be about our health to me. Any thoughts?
On the ground level, for those of us that are healthcare workers, for those of us that are just trying to earn, a living for our families day by day, it is about healthcare and the importance of healthcare. But as we deal with the hard left, it's all about power, and they're driving a story. And the thing that irritates and frustrates them the most is the fact that we have red state governors that are keeping their states open and proving that lockdowns don't work, proving that masks don't work. In fact, it seems like when we go to blue states where there are mandatory lockdowns, mandatory masking, what we see is we see a higher death rate. We see a higher morbidity rate. So it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But they're going to do everything they can to avoid it. Oh, and by the way, those ethicists, there's another way of controlling a word. If you don't believe that there's a right and a wrong, and it's not based on a worldview, that there is a creator, or like Plato or Socrates, who didn't, they just understood that there was a natural right and wrong. Then if you don't have that belief, being an ethicist is one of the most dangerous things to be, because if you're dealing with moral relativism, look, and say that you're an ethicist, you can make those points that everybody should be locked down. They should have no rights, no liberty. And but that doesn't really make you an ethicist.
Indeed, you're correct. We're going to cover one more thing here, Doc, about this vaccination thing. Then we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to play a video that went pretty viral that you did a couple of days ago, I think, based upon the flip-flopping and this misinformation and confusion coming out of the government. Depends upon which agency it is. I mean, it's just, you can tell it's just unorganized, and the leadership is just bad. It's just poor. It's poor. The leadership of our country right now is probably at the lowest level it's ever been. But let's talk about this real quick. I said this before, Doc. I stated on my show numerous times, they don't want the optics of the government coming in and holding you down, really, and shooting you full and getting all that going viral on YouTube and social media, right? They don't necessarily want that. I said what they're going to do is they're going to put pressure on private businesses to make it more difficult for you to live your life. They're going to make your life so confined that you can barely even go out and you get your mail. Pretty much is all you can really do without being, without tracked or traced or whatever. Now we got Cuomo coming out. I know this is not in Montana, but this is, I think, what happens on the coast seems to kind of go across the country. As I stated, Cuomo demands private businesses ban unvaccinated customers. Does that trouble you, Al, that they've actually, the businesses have gotten rich off the backs of the American consumers, and many of these have just had tremendous amount of wealth and stock value. Fortune 500 companies, some of these places, have gotten that way off the backs of regular consumers, and now it seems like they're sort of, it's fascism, Doc. When government teams up with private businesses to tyrannize the population, that's what I see as fascism. Does it trouble you that the private businesses are sort of teaming up with the government? They're sort of like a proxy for the government. Even though government can't do it, they're being like a proxy for the government, which is still, I think, not proper. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. Now, again, as you say the word fascism, that's another one of those words that the hard left throws at us who are conservative, who believe in the Constitution, because they know that word is hurtful, because it's hurt humanity. So let's break it down. Fascism is Italian for National Socialism. And in order for National Socialism to work, the government, Mussolini, had to get full buy-in by the corporations. You need corporatism, which means that they will do the bidding of the government. Corporations are no longer independent. They follow the government. And for that, they are allowed to be a winner. And if you're a corporation or a small business that does not fall lockstep in with the people in power, you're a loser. And they destroy your business, and they do everything to get you, and you're just not allowed to run business. So here we go. We're seeing another very important and dangerous step towards fascism in America.
Right on. I agree. No, that is the definition of fascism, when corporations and government sort of come together. Doc, we're going to take a quick commercial break here, and we come back on the other side. We're going to play that video that went viral from a couple of days ago. But before we do that, go ahead. Your website there is right on the screen, alformontana.com. Is that the best place to go, Al? Are there other? I know you have some Facebook stuff probably set up. I don't know if you have any. I know you have someone doing your social media stuff now. Where can people go to find out more about you and more about your campaign, about your platform, and also if you have any speaking engagements coming up here anytime soon? You're going to be at any public events. Feel free to go ahead and give those out too if you'd like.
Well, thanks. alformontana.com is a good start. And watch, because as we will slowly build upon that website, it's summertime, and we want Montanans to be vigilant, but we want you to enjoy what there is of our summer, despite the smoke. And when we hit September, you're going to see that will be your first place to really look and find out where we're at, what we're doing, and how we're taking this fight. Just like any good Class C competition, this Republican primary is going to be a place that we're going to hold, our contenders accountable, and I have assumed that they'll do the same for us.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about, Doc, on the other side of the break here is it really doesn't matter how good of a candidate you are, how good your platform is, or even how much money you raise. If they cheat good candidates like you out of the vote, I mean, that's the most important. I think an honest election is more important than any fundraising that you can possibly do, because it really doesn't matter. You could raise $100 million, but if they take every vote that's voted for you is 2 for the other guy, there's nothing you could really do. So I think it's something we need to address, and we could talk about that on the other side. Appreciate you looking in. It's MontanaGazetteRadio.com, MontanaGazetteRadio.com, MontanaDailyGazette.com for the #1 online news site in Montana. We're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. We're going to put Al's microphone on mute. I'll be back after these brief messages here on the show. Please support us, again, by going to MontanaDailyGazette.com. We'll be back after these brief messages. If you like classic cars, exceptional service, and a money-back guarantee, then the Corner Shop in beautiful downtown Kalispell is the place for you. Whether it's an oil change, engine diagnostic, suspension work, or brakes all around, the Corner Shop has you covered. With expert technicians and a free consultation on all services, you can't go wrong with the Corner Shop. Did I mention the classic cars? While you're waiting for your expert service to be performed, take a stroll through the showroom to see Kalispell's smoothest collection of classic cars. The Corner Shop is conveniently located at 1212 South Main, just south of the courthouse. The Corner Shop is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., so drop by for an appointment or call 755-7777. That's 755-7777. The Corner Shop, Kalispell's full-service auto repair facility. Hi, this video is brought to you by PatriotPrepared.com, where right now you can save $250 on each large package purchase, plus get free shipping to the continental United States. In these troubled times, it's not a bad idea to have some extra food storage available, and you can save big at Patriot Prepared right now. Go to PatriotPrepared.com, that's PatriotPrepared.com, and use the code TRUMP250 at checkout to receive your savings today. Okay, folks, if you have not yet gotten some storable food, right now is the great time to do it while it's before it's too late. And I don't know exactly what the future's going to hold. Who knows? But, you can already see in some of the stores where some of the products aren't there. The shelves are empty. I think that's just a harbinger of things to come, unfortunately. So if you don't have storable food and water filtration, go to PatriotPrepared.com. That's PatriotPrepared.com. We have some great deals on some large food packages there, and you can get yourself prepared for whatever comes. Who knows, folks? It's not a bad idea to be prepared regardless. Okay, we're going to get back to our guest, Al Olszewski. Al is running for Congress here, coming up in 2022. Let's take him off mute. There we go. It might ask you to go off mute. I think you might have to do the mouse, Al. I think you have to. I think you're going to have to hit that mouse button on the screen and go off. There you go.
There we are.
There you go. Al, thanks for holding on after the break. We appreciate it. Okay, so as I stated before the break, Al, you see what's going on here in Arizona. I think 10 or 12 different states now are calling for revotes or recounts or whatever they're doing and then revotes, probably recounts. I don't necessarily think, in my view, that this is going to do anything about the last election too much. I think this is all setting the groundwork, hopefully, for we can have transparent, honest elections in 2022, because I think a lot of the shenanigans that they've pulled to disenfranchise guys like you and I and other voters across the country, I think a lot of those tricks and tactics are going to be revealed in these audits and these groups that are looking into it. I don't think it's going to be as bad in 2022, and if you ever stop it completely. How imperative is it, Doc, that we get this whole voting system thing all worked out, whether it's not electronic at all? If they have to just do written paper ballots, if that's what it takes, it's paramount that we have an honest election system. Your comments on that, Al, going into the campaign season here shortly?
Yeah, again, without the perception of honest, valid elections, then you cannot. There is no government that can govern with the consent of the people, because there's always going to be someone who's going to be doubting that legitimacy of the government, and we don't want that. You know, the United States has been one of those very few countries that has had the transfer of power every 4 to 8 years, and with that has been seamless without violence until most recently, as we've seen the hard left in 2016 and 2020 show and rear their ugly heads. So we need to trust our election process, and that's what auditing is all about. We audit businesses, we audit many processes to make sure that they are honestly following the rules, and the government, and especially our election process, is not above that.
Now we're going to go pop over to the video here that again that went pretty much viral. It's actually a nice shot, by the way. It's a nice backdrop on there. You get a really nice video on it. Too bad it's so smoky. At any rate, we're going to play this video here that you put out here a couple of days ago. Went kind of viral, and let's get your comments on it afterwards. Here we go.
I'm Dr. Olszewski. The Air Force trained me to protect our pilots and our air crews from nuclear, chemical, and bacteriologic warfare. Based on that experience, here are my comments to the CDC about their new mask guidelines. Are you nuts? You know the science says that cloth masks don't work against viruses. You know the science says that paper masks do not work against viruses. And you know that the science says that in our country, the safest place for kids to be at is really in the school environment. So, CDC, you have shown once and for all that you've become a weaponized political tool for the Democrat Party. And therefore, you are no longer in a position to tell us what to do. And as far as you, Dr. Fauci, it's time for you to retire. It's time for you to quit, or it's time for you to be fired. It's simple as that. Look, let's go back to the original mission 1.5 years ago. And that was to make sure that as people got infected by this new virus, that we didn't overwhelm our healthcare system where nobody would have all the available healthcare treatment available. We are no longer in a pandemic. We're in an endemic, which means that coronavirus is just no different than the influenza virus, the RSV virus, the norovirus, and all the other viruses. Older people will get infected and they will go to the hospital, but we will no longer overwhelm the system because of it. So with that, what I'm saying to you, Dr. Fauci and the CDC, you're nuts. And in fact, you're nuts with cow manure spread all over it.
You're nuts with cow manure spread all over it. Great job, Al. I tell you, I couldn't have said it better. I would have said probably a little bit harsher things, but that's good. That's good. You're a public figure. But let me say those things. But that's good. You're nuts with manure spread all over it. That is what it seems like, Al. It seems like you've got the different agencies within the federal government given different guidelines. I mean, here's the thing that gets me. Here's what people don't understand, right? Here's, in my view, Al, the argument that people aren't making. They're worried about what the CD says and the other government agencies say. I didn't vote for any of these people. Hey, these people aren't elected by me. What makes you think that they have the right to even tell me what to do? They don't have the right. They say, well, it's not the thing. Well, Biden's going to put out another vaccine mandate. The big question is does he even have a right constitutionally to do so? And the answer is no. We don't live under a dictator. We fought a war for that. Any thoughts on that stuff, Al?
Well, absolutely. I mean, our country is governed by the people. And it was created so that we would have liberty. And for people that go, well, liberty, that's a good word. You know, it's the action of freedom. It means that we can live as free as we possibly can without impugning or impinging upon other people's freedom to live and to do what they wish to do. That's what we're all about. What we see is Biden cannot just tell us that we're wearing masks. He cannot tell us, he nor the federal government does not have that power. That's tyranny when they go beyond the Constitution. Here's what we know. Science says my whole life as a surgeon who protected myself with masks through surgery and through working in procedures in the emergency room, the operating room, or in the office, as the masks keep from body fluids being spit upon me, thrown upon me, and will work against bacteria. But viruses themselves that are just floating through the air, they're too small. They will go through the fibers of your mask. In fact, that's probably why at the Wuhan virology lab that this was an issue, because they were working with a dangerous virus if it got into human cells and became infective, and they were doing so without the appropriate personal protection. And so people were infected in that lab and they took it outside the lab, whether intentionally or unintentionally. That was how it got out. Remember, and I guess the last thing, science tells us that in school, especially here in Montana, we did not have a super spreader event. They did contact tracing throughout all our schools, and they could not point to where a student passed it on to a staff or to a teacher. It didn't happen. And if we look at the number of kids that got seriously ill, hospitalized, or died in our school system, there were 0 deaths. 0. So why would we be trying to keep them out of school, putting them in masks that they wore most of the time around their neck, because kids are not the least compliant with these rules. So the science shows that more children died from drug overdoses and suicide being at home in isolation than all of the children that died from the coronavirus.
I'm going to ask you this question, Doc, and I've said this on my program numerous times, and I don't necessarily think you would disagree. Here in the Flathead Valley especially, we're not really a big fan of big government. And I've said on my, as no one should be, and I've said on my program numerous times, D.C. is a swamp. A lot of those people are compromised. A lot of those people are paid off and bought off and bribed. It's more important for you to pay attention to what's going on at City Hall, what's going on with your county commissioners, and certainly what's going on, in our case, in Helena, your local politics. And I still, you running for Congress notwithstanding, I still believe that's the best formula to take our country back. Why, Doc, and I'm just going to ask you the question, why should we even be focused anymore? I know you're going to be running, you'll be going to Washington if you win, when you win. Why should we be even concerned with Washington? To the person in Montana, Flathead Valley, they look lost to us. They look like they're completely compromised. Look, they've locked these guys up now since they won't even let congressmen come and see these guys in jail. They won't let there's attorneys even. I mean, this is like a criminal operation that's being run right now. Why should we even pay attention to them, Al, and not focus all of our attention on Montana? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's one word: power. It's power. I mean, the federal government can print money. They have the military. They have all of these 3-letter agencies, the FBI, the DOJ, and they can make our lives miserable. As we see, if they want to lock us up in a federal prison and do it in solitary confinement, they do it. And there's not much else we can say. So yes, we have to pay attention to Washington, D.C., because of the power that's there. But the truth is, with all that power, it's the boots on the ground. As a military officer, it doesn't matter how much we fly through the air and have control of the airspace. If we don't have boots on the ground, we don't win this war. So yes, the very first place is our school boards, because they are training our children who are the next generation of exceptional Americans. And if they don't believe it, they won't be those exceptional Americans. That's our city council. That's our county commissioners. And then the state. Control the local area. If we're going to have to resist or fight power and tyranny, it requires us to have a safe place. And that's our home.
Indeed, indeed. Let's talk, if we can, a little bit about land. Here, Doc. We're seeing just some raging wildfires going on all across Montana. The valley's filled with smoke. There's been, I think, right on Flathead Lake, there's been 8 or 10, maybe 12 homes that have been destroyed by fire. All over across all different parts of Montana. Places are burning. Thompson Falls, I think they're losing homes there in Thompson Falls. This doesn't have to happen, Doc. Again, that's another example. Washington is how many miles away from Montana? 2,500 miles away? Montanans and the state of Montana can manage things better than Washington, D.C., some thousands of miles away. This is a direct result. I had Ammon Bundy on the show, who's actually running for governor here of Idaho. I had him on last week. And he said, Jim, the fires that you're having in Montana are a direct result of government mismanagement on the forest. You have any thoughts on that, Al? I know you're a big land guy. I know you a lot about land. Comment on that if you would.
Right. Well, again, we know when it comes to property and ownership, local stewardship is the most important way to take care of the land and property. Federal lands are public property that we own in common, and we should want the best people and the best control to take care of that property, not only for timber and for the actual land, but for our wildlife and our watersheds. These are important for life. So I'll tell you what Washington, D.C. needs is for a group of farmers and ranchers and independent foresters to run the subway system of Washington, D.C. from Montana and just make arbitrary decisions from this distance on how to best run it. And I think that they would learn within 3 days that that we should have local control and local stewardship. But it's paramount that we in Montana control and manage and be the proper stewards, not only for our state lands, but for our federal lands.
You know, I saw an interview by a guy named Martin Armstrong. You may or may not know him. He's a world famous economist and he does analysis. And he actually, believe it or not, he had stated that Klaus Schwab had contacted him to get him on board with the Great Reset, and he kind of said no way. But he's talking about the last interview I heard with him. I think it was with Greg Hunter from USA Watchdog. He stated that his trends, his predictions are saying that there's going to be a pulling away from states, from the federal government. They're going to be pulling away from the federal government. You already see the new California movement. There's a new Nevada movement. There's a new Illinois movement. I've interviewed Paul Preston, who was really spearheaded the new California movement. They got like 54 out of 58 counties on board now because they realize that, there's a lot of corruption going on. Do you see that, Al? I know you don't have you're not saying you endorse this. I'm just asking this as for your observations. You've been in the political scene for a long time. Do you see the movement? Are you hearing any rumblings or anybody talking about the pulling away from the federal government? We did kind of do that somewhat in the legislature, where we had the bills, to where the federal government can't come in with the ammunition and the gun parts and things like that. Kind of a little bit doing that. Do you think that's going to be a broader movement as we go forward?
Well, what I see and what I hear is the movement of, once again, of enhancing and returning back to the rights of the states, so that all 50 states have the right of self-determination, get it closer to the people, where we have representative democracy, a constitutional republic. And I think that, if we compare 2009 with the Tea Party, which was individuals fighting for those rights and for our Constitution, we are now seeing in 2021 a Tea Party 2.0 that not only involves we the people, but is now involving state governments, especially ones that are controlled by Republican legislatures, that are saying, we're standing up. We've drawn a line in the sand, and we want to talk, and we're going to fight for the 10th Amendment. And all I can say is that as your next congressman from Western Montana, I am going to support that, and we're going to fight for the 10th Amendment.
Talk, if you can. I agree. That's great, and I think that's excellent. Talk, if you can, about the out of control spending, Al. If you get elected to Congress, then you're going to have a vote as far as some of this crazy spending goes. I think it's good that they stopped the $300 a week extra government, paycheck here in Montana. I know they're suing in other states, and they actually overturned it in some states and made them turn it back on again. What's your thoughts about the out-of-control spending, Al? It seems to me that we're so far in debt, it's a bill that can never be repaid. I mean, trillions and trillions of dollars, and they're just printing more. Now they're coming out with some $1 trillion package after they just had some $3 trillion package. I mean, people don't really realize if you try to fill a room full of $100 bills and make $1 trillion out of it, it would feel like it feel like an auditorium. I mean, people don't realize how much money this is. Talk, if you can, about just the absolute fiscal irresponsibility we got going on right now, Al.
Well, what's going on is our federal government needs to go on a diet, of currency, and why? What we're watching is we're seeing a government that is so big that it truly has failed its fiduciary responsibilities, its constitutional obligations, because it's learned that if it can just buy people's votes by giving them free stuff, that they can stay in power. And who? Not just the Democrats, the deep state, the bureaucrats that are supposed to be public servants are now the ones that believe that they are truly in power and the guardians of this country. So it's time for them to go on a diet. And it's time to stop this, because we are hurting the poor people, the lower working middle class, because by causing inflation, this is all about causing the pressure on the bottom, we're losing the value of our dollar. And I'll tell you, there won't be a $15 minimum wage is not going to help anybody. In another year or two of this outrageous spending, you're going to need a $50 minimum wage. And you're going to have the $24.99 a Big Mac meal deal at one of your local restaurants because of inflation. This is the scariest thing that can happen to Americans is inflation.
On that point, one of the greatest hedges against inflation historically has been precious metals, gold and silver, and other precious metals, primarily gold and silver. Would you be open, Doc, with what we're talking about, the out-of-control spending, the just printing money out of thin air? There have been other states, Utah, and one or two other states, if I remember correctly, that have moved over to allowing gold and silver to be legal tender. That would give a person a little bit of a way to sort of save some of their wealth, so it's not eaten up by inflation. Because every time they print $1 trillion, folks, that money you have in your pocket loses value. It's worth less. It's just a lot of supply and demand. I mean, think about it. $1 trillion more out there, that increases the supply tremendously. What's your thoughts on that, Al, about at least exploring the idea? I don't even know how far along we've come here in Montana. It seemed to be natural that we do that, us being the treasure state and all, but I don't think we've introduced that yet in legislature. Maybe I'm wrong. What would be your thoughts on that, Al, about maybe even considering going gold and silver legal tender here in Montana?
Again, we need to tie the value of our currency to something. Gold, silver, a bushel of wheat, something. Because right now it's not tied, and that's why we've watched inflation and the value of the dollar to go down. Yeah, Jim, I don't know about you, but I was around when we disconnected from the gold and silver standard. And the truth is that regardless of what our value of our money costs, if you look at an ounce of gold, whether it was $75 in the early 1970s, an ounce of gold would buy you a really nice suit. An ounce of gold would pay for a 1 month on your house mortgage. Guess what? In the year 2021, 1 ounce of gold will pay for a nice suit of the same quality in 1974. 1 ounce of gold will pay for 1 month of your house mortgage. So the value of gold has not changed. It's the fact that our currency has become cheaper. There was a commercial that said you got change from $1 if you went to one of the local fast food stores. Now you can buy that same meal and it costs you $8. So that just shows you that the value of our money is being cheapened. The value of our work and labor is being cheapened and taken advantage of. We need to find a way to tie currency to a standard, and that way we have a standard of we can then pay for work in a reasonable, fair, and transparent way.
You know, we're coming towards the end of the interview here, and I know you've always been a grassroots guy. You've traveled, I don't know how many miles during the 40,000 miles around Montana, going to about every town, holding town hall meetings and meeting with the folks. No one that I've ever known has done more to meet with the folks than you have, Al. And I think you got your odometer will prove that. Give us, if you can, here some solutions in the last part of the broadcast here. I know, like I said, you're a grassroots guy. You don't necessarily want to be the man. You want to be the person that helps empower everybody, because that's how we're really going to take this country back. Not from Dr. Al, not from Donald Trump. It's from a collective, everybody coming together as one as much as we can in this divided country, coming together and saying we're not taking it anymore. And like I said, Al, like I've said in this program many times, there's no need for violence. You don't have to break out your firearms. You don't have to get baseball bats and beat people over the head. Just say, no, we're not going to comply with your tyranny any longer. We're just not going to do it any longer. That's all we have to do, Al. And it all goes away. Any thoughts on that coming towards the end? How do people get active?
Yeah. Well, again, traveling the state for a couple statewide races. No, I've put on about 160,000 miles within our state over the last 4 years. That's, it's about 6 times around the earth at its equator. And here's what we know is, by and large, it doesn't matter what party or what affiliation you have in Montana, we want to live free. We want to have a say in who we are, what our family does, and what, we want that responsibility, that power for ourselves, not that the government has it and that they tell us what we do, what we're going to make, where we go to school. We want to live free. That's the Montana way of life. And we want to respect our neighbors. If our neighbors have a different viewpoint, as long as our fences are fixed and we don't have our cattle going from one side to another, we respect our neighbors and we will help them when they go into hard times. That's the Montana way of life. And what's going on is that everybody, even Mike Mansfield Democrats, are saying to me, Al, I can't support the National Democrat Party that is giving illegal migrants everything at my cost, that they are supporting anarchy and protests and riots that are destroying Seattle and Portland. I don't want that to come to Missoula. I don't want that to come to Great Falls, Butte, or Billings. So I'll tell you, I voted a red ticket last time. Don't tell anybody, but I did, because our freedom is more important, and I don't see a pathway to freedom in the Democrat Party. So look, we're fighting for that freedom. That's what it's all about, pure and simple. That's what 2021 and going into the 2022 election is. Who do you believe is going to protect your freedoms more? Somebody from a Republican Party that's willing to say government needs to be limited and we need to drive the power back down into the states and local government where you can actually have a say? Or are you all about having the government treat you like a cattle, and they're going to feed you? They're going to give you your antibiotics so that you can stay as healthy as you can, so you can be a worker bee, so that you can pay taxes. It's up to you, but I choose freedom.
Interesting. That's one of the fastest growing gun buying populations is Democrats. That's
absolutely,
it is. And that's probably why there's no ammo on the shelf, because they started from zero. They're having to stock up, right? I mean, it's a great thing to see them. And a funny thing, and a little side note, there was a couple of these Hollywood types that were doing these movies and they were anti-gun. And then for their movies, they had to actually fire a gun and go to a range and fire a gun. And they went from being anti-gun after they actually fired guns and went there and practiced with them. Now they're pro-gun. Believe it or not, in Hollywood, it doesn't happen very often. I know you're very pro-gun, Al. Last question. you would never vote, and I'm assuming you would never vote, and I know the answer to this, but you would always vote strongly for the Second Amendment rights of all people in Montana. Of course, they're going to continue to come after our guns because they can never truly conquer us if we are armed, because we have millions and millions of firearms, which our founding fathers knew well ahead of time. This is going to be your premier issue. I probably shouldn't even phrase it that way. That's going to be probably one of your main, I would imagine, platforms when you go to Washington, D.C., is maintaining and preserving the Second Amendment rights of Montanans and all people across the country. I'll allow that to be the final question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Without the Second Amendment, you don't have the First Amendment. You don't have any of the amendments. We've already watched. The federal government has failed us on border security. They've failed us on public health. They've failed us on so many levels. And now we've watched, especially in the urban centers, that they fail in taking care of you for your personal protection. And the truth is that you don't have to own a firearm. It's just a tool. But if you decide that you want to protect yourself and your family, you need to be able to have that opportunity. And I will fight to the death that you will have that opportunity to protect yourself and your family from an intruder and from anybody that wants to be a tyrant. Anybody.
That's right. Well put. Folks, Al for Montana, I'll go back here to the right screen here, alformontana.com. alformontana.com. And folks, everybody can't run for office and make the change that needs to be made. So if you can't do it, donate to the people that do. Go right here. It's real easy to donate to Dr. Al. Just go right to Al for Montana, hit the donate button, and look how easy it is right there. That's the thing, folks. The other side is very, very well funded by a lot of dark money and a lot of really scoundrels and people that are conservatives here. We need your support. And one of the problems with conservatives is they're conservative. Don't be conservative when it comes to supporting guys like Dr. Al or this broadcast or people that are out there doing, on the front lines. Again, if you can't be on the front lines doing it yourself, which is okay, at least support the people that are. Al, I'm going to go ahead and give you 1 minute to go ahead and close things out. Say anything you'd like to say. Any speaking engagements, again, that you have coming up or anything, any place you want to direct people, anything like that. You got the floor, Al. Go ahead.
So number one, look to Al for Montana or our Facebook page at Al Olszewski or Al for Montana. That's where you're going to see where our speaking engagements will occur and where we're going to be. That starts in September. Today, we're assembling a tier 1 team. Yes, in order for us to be able to be a tier 1 candidate and to afford a tier 1 campaign team, it requires money, which is a form of power. You know what? I don't want corporation money. I don't want rich people that say, now you owe me. What we're doing is we're fighting for the grassroots small dollar donation. And quite honestly, the people in DC are scared of candidates that have grassroots support. So our goal is to get 3,000 people to donate at least $1 to our campaign, because that sends a clear and resounding message to the deep state that, this guy he can't be bought because he's got the people behind him. So go to alformontana.com. Consider, if you can, donate at least $1 and become part of the grassroots movement, because that's what we're going to need to take 2022.
Folks, all I can say is I know Dr. Al personally. We've spoken privately many times. He's the real deal. What you see is what you get. He's doesn't have any trickery or underhanded rhino blood flowing through his body for sure. He's the man of his word. He's true blue, that's for sure. And I fully support Dr. Al. And I said I know him personally, and I couldn't be a better candidate, Al. And we certainly support you here, and we're delighted that you took time to come on our broadcast today. And so much appreciate what you're doing, and we'll stand behind you. We'll have you on, I'm sure, many more times before you go. alformontana.com, folks. alformontana.com. And we just are at the end of the broadcast here today. We do appreciate you looking in. You can support us by going to montanagazetteradio.com, montanagazetteradio.com. We are waiting on the computer system. Apparently it's 2 or 3 weeks even to build the computer from scratch, but when that arrives here, we'll be kicking off our broadcast on the network there on the AM and FM in Billings, the Billings area. So stay tuned for that. We again appreciate you looking in. For my guest, Al Olszewski, this is James White for Montana Gazette Radio, saying bye now.
Yeah.